And it's a new wave of travel restrictions across the globe, particularly in Europe. We have Janelle Dumas-Laon, a Deutsche Welle correspondent. She joins us now on the impact to the travel sector. Hi, Janelle. So it's just weeks after having reopened its borders to one another. However, the freedom to travel within Europe is seeing some fresh curbs. Why is this?
Well, now that there are fears of a second wave of coronavirus rolling around Europe, it's reignited this discussion around fresh lockdowns and restrictions. So you basically had the situation for a while in Europe where people had this renewed freedom to travel within the continent. But that led to fears that holidaymakers were dragging the coronavirus with them to and from their home countries. So in a way, we're seeing fresh restrictions because older restrictions were lifted. But of course, it doesn't look the same way all across the board within Europe. Germany is calling for mandatory testing, for example, for travelers that are coming from areas deemed risky, while Greece wants to see negative tests from arrivals from Bulgaria and Romania. And you also have the likes of the UK that is starting to impose again 14-day quarantines for people coming from Luxembourg and Spain, which of course itself is seeing an uptick in infections. Yesterday marked a post-lockdown record for the country with 2,789 new infections, the most since mid-May.
But especially Spain has been badly affected by these travel restrictions. Is a country, as a country that heavily relies on its tourism, what kind of impact are we seeing?
Basically, what happened was when the UK announced these new quarantine rules, you basically had a wave of British tourists canceling their holidays, saying that they would be not able to afford to stay at home to isolate for 2 more weeks just after having come from holiday. Now, because of that, for example, the biggest travel firm in Europe, TUI, canceled its flights between Spain and the UK. You have the likes of Jet2, which is a low-cost leisure carrier, reaching out to its clients who are currently in the Canary Islands, saying, look, you have to cut your holiday short or risk finding your own way back home. Now, this is important because Britain is the biggest source for Spanish tourists, just followed by Germany. And all that money that they're going to spend in the hotels, the restaurants, the bars, Spain just isn't going to see that anymore. While the tourism and travel sector and the hospitality industry is suffering all across the board in Europe, it's fair to say that nowhere is harder hit than Spain.
Walk us through what's happening. The European aviation sector has been dealt a special blow from airlines to airplane makers.
It's wholesale misery all across the sector indeed, starting with European plane maker Airbus, who just yesterday posted a 1.9 billion euro loss in terms of its quarterly figures. It also said that it has to cut 1/10 of its workforce. Lufthansa, Germany's flagship carrier, had to be saved by state aid to the tune of 6 billion euros. But of course, its future business will depend on whether it's able to shift its profit center from business travel to tourists, which of course is difficult at this time as all travel remains fraught. Those are just some of the experiences that the big companies are experiencing, but smaller companies are affected as well. You have Iceland Air announcing that it's laying off all its flight attendants and that the pilots will have to pick up the slack, meaning that if you are a pilot for Iceland Air and you are not currently flying, you may be called upon to serve as crew. Now, that sounds like a strange and quirky story at this time, but it's just one further indicator of how troubled this industry has become.
All right, Janelle Dumas-Laon, Deutsche Welle correspondent. Always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you. Continue to keep safe.